The masters have always said that 50% of the movie watching experience is audio, and it is my job to create that sonic experience as a movie sound designer. Hi, I'm Dipankar Chaki. I'm a sound designer. I have sound designed films like Pink, October, Gulabo Sitabo, Sardar Udham, and I have won two national awards, one Filmfare Award, one Z Award, and one Mahanayak Samman Award. Today, I will share a bit of my journey with you. It all starts with storytelling, and as in movie or film, we see a story, and the creator is trying to tell a story through the medium of visual and sound. So, sound forms a very important integral element to the narrative of storytelling in cinema. Uh, this manipulation of sound to create the world of the movie that we are basically making or showing, and the different aspects of the usage of sound to basically influence different segments of storytelling is what we call sound design. It involves the knowledge of cinema. It involves to have the knowledge of technology, and of course the aesthetics of art. So sound design, I would say, ideally lies at the intersections of technology and art and cinema. A little bit about my personal journey as a sound designer. I had started studying in Calcutta and moved into engineering. While I was doing my studies in engineering, I was also into music. I was personally very influenced by the rock music of that era, and was part of a band as a bass player. And post my engineering, I was really keen and interested to basically get into live sound, because it really impacted me to a great degree, that like when such a huge audience is sitting in a stadium or theater, and like listening to a band, there's one person who's sitting right in behind and controlling the entire system. And this actually came out of one of my experiences earlier in life, when I'd gone to see a live concert of the Rolling Stones, and I saw that there was a gentleman sitting right behind and controlling the sound of the Rolling Stones. And it struck me that it never occurred to me that that Rolling Stones, a band like that, would need to have somebody so efficient and so talented to basically represent them and their sound to the audience who's listening to it. And he was handling this massive system of some 25-30,000 watts, and controlling every aspect of it. So it fascinated me. So that's how I think my interest started in the sound business. And post that, I kind of got into studio sound, which is basically recording. So as a musician, my natural uh, journey was to basically get into music recording, and I had then done music recording for many years, multiple years. I had been doing music recording for songs, for films, working with DJs, working with independent artists with their albums, and got really exposed to a foray of instruments, to different kinds of uh, situations where artists require to create a certain kind of sound, be it percussive, be it like a melodic instrument. And this really gave me a lot of exposure into how the recording technology works, how we basically like to listen to something that is pleasant. From there, my journey went on to basically working with smaller films, where we needed to do sound effects, we needed to work with voiceovers. And with that, I also learned a lot about the human voice, dialogues, about sound effects, a little about Foley. And I think there on, I plunged completely into the world of cinema, which is fascinating, because I think movies actually encompass the entire gamut of artistic possibilities, because we were working with dialogue as well as music, as well as songs, as well as sound effects and Foley, and all put together to kind of create a certain kind of impact on the viewers mind about how the story is being told, and being successful at it, and to create an immersive experience of that. With my experience of having done a lot of the music work and the recordings, and a lot of the foley recordings, which we do as live action foley, like footsteps and small incidental sounds to make the film come to life. I thought that I was ready to now plunge into a different aspect of cinema, which was sound design. And I think sound design is possibly one of the most interesting practices in our fraternity. One of the big reasons is being that sound is an intangible form. It is something that you cannot see and feel and touch, of course. So it's something that always lies in the subconscious when you experience the movie. So when you're watching a film, you have no idea that how sound is actually impacting you, because your mind is engaged more on the visual and the sound is actually working on your subconscious. And hence, if you see, like, an example, a good example would be a horror film where you see a character who's maybe walking through a dark corridor and is very scared, but the sounds will be basically the the I mean setup. It will set up the whole scene. It will set up the amount of fear that we want to create. It will also give you the whole feeling of like what to expect, because the minute you know that everything is going like low and quiet, something is about to happen, and then boom, there's a bang sound. I mean, something like a loud sound that will completely throw you off. So I think those are the kind of powers that sound has, in its own way. And there are multiple ways in which we can manipulate it in a movie. I would like to draw a few examples of such kind. While we are doing a movie, with sound, we can basically set a mood or a feeling. Like, we are, suppose, for example, it's a romantic setting and we see this beautiful, woman sitting in a garden and, waiting for uh, her man to come in, and it's supposed to be a romantic setting. So then the garden that is around her has to be designed in a certain way where it is beautiful, like the kind of birds, because we must remember that in cinema all the sounds that we are hearing is basically put by the sound designer, in addition, the sound editor actually, in addition to what has been recorded on location. So on location sounds are basically mainly the dialogue, and the rest of the effects sounds very realistic and doesn't create the sense of the world that you want to build in a movie. So the entire world building exercise is done later at the post production stage in sound studios, where the director will sit with the sound designer and break down scenes and say, "Ki, okay, in this scene, I'm looking at the scene like this, like it's absolutely a beautiful kind of a setting, and we wanted to want to put the audience in this kind of a mood." So we would do the sound effects in such a way that the audience would actually feel that they're in that garden, which is beautiful. There's small birds which are chirping. There's a little wind. The leaves are rustling. So how we choose the different elements of sound to basically put it together in a way to create that kind of a mood and setting is what we have to do. Our job is, well, when we are watching a movie, we also have something which is called pacing, like how fast a movie is, moving from shot to shot, scene to scene, sequence to sequence. So there are certain times in certain scenes or certain sequences where we feel the need that we need to, like speed up the viewing experience. Now, the visual might be moving at a certain pace, but it is possible to some extent to pace up the actual experience of viewing by like designing the sound in a certain way. Like, for example, I see this girl who's sitting on a railway platform, and she's just looking at the floor, and there's no sound. but I need and the shot is quite long, and I need to basically pace up this shot. So I can put the sound of a train, which I don't see on the shot. I can put a sound of the train which is passing by, and that would kind of, like pace up that sequence. Just to give an example to understand what I really am trying to say. So this in this way, like we can also use sound design to pace up certain segments of a scene. Also, very importantly, I think you can use sound to define geographical locations. For example, you are sitting under a tree, and we just see the person on the tree, like who's being shot, for example, and there is nothing else that we see. But from the point of view of sound, we can add certain elements to that place. For example, what if we place, a waterfall next to it? What if we are looking at them and, like we hear the sound of, say, an aeroplane or a helicopter which is passing overhead? It could also be a car, it could be a motorcycle. It could also very well be, like very close to a factory, and, there's some kind of a industrial sound. Now, how would we choose what sound to use? It would be totally dependent on what's happening on the scene. What is the what is the protagonist, or what is the character going through? What is the context of that scene? And then with that we will bring in, like these kind of elements. What is the story about? Like if it's a story that is about, say, relationship drama, that's a certain way to handle things. Then if the story is a thriller or like a mystery film, then like there's a certain way we can do things. But the idea is always that these are cues that we are giving to the audience, to like which they're putting together in their head, adding up and trying to find some kind of meaning or pattern to what's really going on. They're trying to decode the film, and the cues are being subconsciously given by us. So that is how also a sound design kind of, I would say, plays with your mind while it is trying to decode a movie. A very important thing is also time. Like time in a film, like there are certain times when we we see that it's day or it's night, but then like day also has its different hours. Like if it's early, it's midday, it's late afternoon. And then I think in the evening, or I mean in the night time, basically it can be divided into early evening, late evening, night, late night, in that way. So I think all these different segments of time have different sounds. So when it's a very early morning, you would really not have many people wake up. So, like there will be less activity. So let's say like exactly how we see how in our daily lives, like early morning is mainly we hear birds, we hear some people, there's some kind of a pleasantness in the overall scene. And then when it comes to like midday, there's a lot of activity because there's traffic, there's people traveling, there's work happening, there's some kind of construction work happening. Like overall, in the neighborhood or in a city, these are the things that take place, right? So similarly in the night, like you would hear activity when it's like early evening, late evening, things will slowly pan out, and very very late night or night, like you would hear very little bit, and just hear the atmospheric sounds. Like you could hear maybe the the night guard's whistle, or you can hear a dog which is barking like 2 lanes away. So these are the elements, these are the ideas that are basically implemented into the way we design the sound for our movies. Besides this, we have another very important feature is how we can define a character. We can define a very strong character by the use of very strong footsteps, or like maybe he's a police officer, as a military person, then he would have really heavy footsteps or something like that. We can define a woman or a feminine character similarly, with earrings, with like ornaments and footsteps which would have, say, if she's wearing a heels or something like that. So automatically the characters get a lot of definition in terms of their personality. So there is a possibility to kind of establish a lot of personality traits in a person through the sound design. Besides this, there is also ways to heighten realism, heighten possibly attention to detail, like then we can also create dramatic effects, like, and even cause shock and startle, like, if in a horror film, you suddenly see these you know, loud sounds which will completely scare you suddenly. So those are basically intended to startle you. These are in total some of the very small applications that we have towards sound design. Of course, there's a whole technology side to it. There's, entirely there's a whole associative study side to it for every film that we work on. And, it just helps because when finally end of the day you're working with, creating sounds, you're going out and recording them, you're working with music, you're working with song, and putting it all together, it's just sheer entertainment. I mean, it's entertainment for you first, and if it's something that's working on you, it's going to work on the audience for sure.